Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So we have just completed July, which means it is time for my monthly wrap-up. I know this video is going up a little bit later than usual, but I finished my last book of July literally on July 31st, really late at night, and I didn't want to film the next morning until I had just enough time to really think, process, and digest the book. So I did delay it from Monday to Thursday, but it is here and it is now. Almost all of these books have or will have in the future reviews on my channel. Most of them are new releases or recent releases, highly anticipated books, and all of that jazz. So the ones with more in-depth reviews that are already online, I won't talk too much about because I already have 10 to 20 minute videos breaking down those books. But this month I did get through 6 novels. I'm really happy with that. I tried really hard to make them summer oriented, and to my dismay, a lot of the books that I thought were going to be summer oriented ended up being autumnal. But I'll get into that as I go through. So first up this month was From Below by Darcy Coates. This is Darcy Coates' latest release. If you've never read Darcy Coates before, she is known for her kind of cozy, whimsical horror where she really does balance very frightening images and situations with like kind of cute, quaint settings, and is pretty well known for her happy endings. That being said, this book is not cozy. It is very much horror, and leaned into a lot of things I've never seen Darcy Coates do before, including body horror. Very detailed, intricate body horror. This is the story about a documentary film crew who go to the basically top of the ocean, I would say, where they're very like 300 feet below, I think, is a mysterious shipwreck that 100 years ago disappeared and has just been rediscovered. Disappeared under very mysterious circumstances, and the book is about their underwater sea dive to the wreck. It is told in 2 different timelines, one from the perspective of a sailor on the original ship as it is slowly descending into its final days, and then the other one through the documentary film crew. I really enjoyed this book. It was very dark, it was very disturbing. It took on a different type of monster than I've seen before. It wasn't a haunting at all in the way that you would normally expect from Darcy Coates, who's very famous for her like ghost stories, and it was super creepy. I did not expect this tone again at all from her, so I was really stunned reading it, and it never let up. It started off dark and it stayed that way the entire time. In classic Darcy Coates fashion, there is kind of a happy cheesy ending, and it is, I would say, maybe about 50 pages too long. It felt a little repetitive and a little redundant, and I didn't like necessarily any of the characters except for maybe 2 who were more minor. Everybody seemed kind of very self-centered, very pushy, very arrogant, which made the situations that they were in kind of okay. I feel like this, for the reader, I feel like this would translate really well to a very claustrophobic inducing horror film, and I would love to see more from Darcy Coates in this genre. I think she did a solid job with her first like really heavy and dark story. And I would love to see her improve upon that because I know she can write a 5-star read with this type of tone. So this was a 4-star read for me, but I really did enjoy it. Okay, next up is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This was sent to me very graciously by Dutton Books. Thank you all so much for that. And I thought that this book was going to be set on a lake house in the summer. It is set on a lake house in autumn, so if you were looking for a summer read, this is not it. In classic Riley Sager fashion, this is a very twisty, turny, whodunit kind of book where he leads you in one direction and then snap, pulls the blindfold off, and you are in a completely different area. I liked this book. I thought the first half of this book was fantastic. I really loved the pacing. I thought the characters were intriguing. I thought the setup of this plot was really cool. And then about halfway through the book, it took this very strange, twisty turn that I didn't see coming because unlike all of his other books, he leaned very heavily into the supernatural and went forward with that. This book is about this book is what happens when rich people have problems. This book is about a TV actress or movie actress who is like hiding from paparazzi at her nice little $1 million lake house, spying on the super rich couple who have moved in next door, who is like a tech CEO and a former model, and she thinks something is going awry in their relationship as she passes the time looking at them through a telescope. Again, the setting was great, the atmosphere was great. I really, really loved the pacing in this book. It really drew you in. Every single chapter had you on the edge of your seat wanting to know what was happening. However, the twist, it kind of killed this book for me. I kept waiting for Riley Sager to come out and be like, haha, tricked you, that's not the twist at all. And that didn't happen. He just really, really leaned into it, and I had a hard time believing it. Had it been any author but Riley Sager, I feel like I would have been okay with it. But because Sager is so good at making you believe something could be supernatural and then logically explaining it away at the end, I was disappointed that this book didn't have that. So 4-star read, still really fun, still really, like, this is definitely a great, like, I'm on vacation and I want to read something, like, lighthearted and spooky and thrilling. That would definitely fit that mold. Okay, next up, we have Dark Across the Bay by Anya Allborn. This is another book that I thought was going to be set in summer and was set in the fall. It is set up in a little, like, island in the middle of nowhere, small town, Maine. A family rents an Airbnb and things go very, very, very awry. Anya Allborn writes some really, really depressing stuff. A lot of her horror is family-centric. Unlike the other stuff that I've read from her, I've read Palmetto and Seed, this book is not supernatural at all. This is all very, very plausible. I read this book in like 2 days. I thought the story was really, really interesting. It single-handedly convinced me never to rent an Airbnb. It does get very brutal at times. That being said, it focuses primarily on dumb, unlikable, selfish characters again. All of these characters are very much one-trick ponies. We have one character, I think her name is Polly, who you get a glimpse that she might have a lot more depth to her, but that doesn't happen until halfway through the book, and it's not really built upon, so it's just kind of this nod that that's there. I just feel like I figured the twist out in this book way too early on. Anya Allborn didn't quite hide it in a way that I felt it could have been hidden, and it, towards the end, just had a lot of glaring plot holes. And almost all of the plot holes, I would say, bank on the fact that forensic science and police investigations, the way they operate today, would completely ruin the resolution at the end of this book. And I watch enough Forensic Files to be like, don't know if I quite believe that. Anyhow, I do have a full in-depth video review on this. I did like this. This does fall on the same kind of level as Palmetto and Seed. I really like Anya Allborn's writing. It is very bleak, though. Her endings are never happy. I mean, I feel like her characters are never happy to begin with. And I did think it was an interesting story. I did like seeing something contemporary, like an Airbnb, be like the downfall of a family. I felt like that was kind of cool. And like just something I haven't seen in books before quite yet. I'm sure people have done it because it's happened in real life, but I liked how it was written. But again, characters were not the strongest in this. They were all pretty unlikable, and they were not the brightest bulbs out there. So 4 stars on that one as well. Okay. Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. If you've been on my channel for a while, you know I really wanted to read this book. You know I was very excited about this book, that this was like a premise. I couldn't get over how cool it sounded. High school kid, kind of nerdy, kind of an outcast, creates a club, like a creepy goth club, where they all volunteer to be pallbearers for people who don't have like a lot of family to be the pallbearers at their funeral. I love that idea. He then befriends somebody in the club who's kind of weird, might be a vampire. He doesn't really know. Let's figure it out. Amazing premise. That sounds so cool. It sounds so cool. That is not what this book is. That is maybe the first like 4 chapters of this book, and that's being generous, I would say. This is Paul Tremblay writing his autobiography and calling it fiction because he decided, hey, let's throw some supernatural shenanigans in there. This book is written as a draft where the quote-unquote potential vampire goes back and edits it. So all of the things that really grinded my gears about this book, all of the like redundancy, the melodramatic whining that Paul Tremblay's character constantly uses in his memoir, the vampire character then blatantly points out. So not only am I sitting there reading things that I'm like, wow, stylistically that was terrible, the book is then telling me stylistically that was terrible, and yet, even though we're self-aware and I'm trying to make a point, I am going to make you read it. This book has no plot. I have a whole video where I just rant about this book, and in that video I start off by saying that this was a 3-star read, but that I kind of felt like it should be a 2-star read. I'm not going to take down my rating on Goodreads, but I do think I'm going to view this book as a 2-star read, because the more I separate myself from this book, the angrier I am. I feel like I wasted a lot of time. I feel like I gained nothing out of it. I feel like it was a cool premise with a cool stylistic direction that was then just completely like trodden over by the bloated ego of the author, and the fact that nobody told him nobody wants to read about your childhood because it's not that interesting, and that it went through enough editing and publishing to be in my hands right now is just mind-boggling. And I don't want to like really hate on Paul Tremblay, because I really do like Tremblay's writing. I think Cabin at the End of the World is great. I think Head Full of Ghosts is one of like the best things I've ever read, but this is just bad. Like this is the book that should have stayed in the drawer, right? And then like 20 years after the author dies, the like grandchild finds it and like publishes it, right? And it's cool because, oh, it's like an introspective of what his life was like, but like, why was this released? Also, you have to have like a pretty intricate knowledge of certain like lesser known punk bands to get a lot of the references in here. And I listen to a lot of punk music, and there was stuff in here that I was like, I don't know this, but I also don't care. And it was just really, this was just written to inflate the author's ego. I think somebody actually commented that on my review video of this, and I fully agree. This was written to inflate the author's ego, but nobody told him that this was going to be very boring, because you left out the interesting part of your life, which is where you became a huge successful horror novelist. And everything else before that was just kind of the generic loner punk dude and his loner friend in high school, and then being in college, and then being an adult before they hit it big. Like it went nowhere, and I don't buy any of the personal relationships and connections any of the characters have, or any of the side stories, because it doesn't add to anything and it doesn't make sense realistically. Like, people don't act like this in real life. If you're gonna write a memoir about yourself and put a fake character in there, at least make it somewhat believable and not actually feel like an add-on. All right, next up, The Widow of Pale Harbor by Hester Fox. I read a Hester Fox book earlier this year, and I'm not gonna remember the name of it because all of her books have titles like The Witch of, The Widow of, the whatever. And I really, really enjoyed it. If I can remember what it is called, I will put it down below, but I can't remember what it was called. But I liked it. I liked the evil tone that it took, and I liked the kind of narrative shift in the different time periods, and I thought it was really fun to read. This is another example of a great premise with a poor execution. It's about a widow in, like, I guess the 1800s in like a small town in Maine. I also believe this is set in fall, which is also annoying because I also picked this up because I really thought that this was going to be a summer read, but I was again wrong. Her husband dies in mysterious circumstances. The whole town thinks that she's behind it and that she's a witch. They ostracize her. A minister comes to town. He meets her. He doesn't think she's a witch. They befriend each other. And as all of that is happening, a series of crimes and murders are happening that are reminiscent and paying homage to Edgar Allan Poe's famous stories. And the witch and the minister, or the widow and the minister, have to try and solve them to clear her name. Cool premise. Really like that idea. This is a romance novel, not a horror novel, and not a thriller, and I wish somebody had told me before I read that, because I am not a fan of romance, and you really, really have to wow me for me to be interested in a romance. If you like romance with like a darker kind of whimsical twist, you'll probably really like this book. If you like horror, you will not like this book. This was just not horror. This was not a thriller. This was not a crime mystery. This is a romance that just somehow has like murder somewhat sprinkled in the background. And so this was just not a me book. This is a 3-star book because it's not poorly written. It's not. I don't necessarily like the characters. I think they're all kind of one-dimensional and they kind of just do the same things over and over and over again, but it was a solid story. I was able to get through it, and I just kept hoping it was going to take a darker, darker, and darker turn the way that the last book I read by Hester Fox did. It did not. It is a romance. I do not like romance. This is solidified that I do not like romance. But yeah, 3-star read for me. If you like romance and you like something that's going to be a little darker, you'll probably enjoy this. This, just not a me book, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Last but not least, we have Black Mouth by Ronald Malfi. I heard that this book was like Ronald Malfi's It, which confused me at first because I was like, December Park is Ronald Malfi's It. This is also Ronald Malfi's It, but kind of a different perspective of it. So for those of you who have read It, you know that It is told in 2 stories, or in like 2 timelines, the children, and then when they come back as adults. So December Park is 100% Ronald Malfi's It for when they are children. This is definitely Ronald Malfi's It when you're focusing on the adults. I really, really loved this. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. This is the story about 3 kids. This is the story about 4 kids who meet a homeless man who doubles as a magician and teaches them magic tricks and does some weird, shady shit in their life. We don't really know what it is until later on in the book. And then when they grow up, all the stuff that they did when they were kids slowly comes back to haunt them, as well as other people that kind of come into their orbit. I'll leave it at that. I really don't want to tell you guys too much about this book because I thought it was absolutely fabulous and I think you guys should read it. I'm going to be doing a full in-depth video on this probably right after this video goes up. This book blew me away. I read it in 4 days and I probably could have read it in 2 if I didn't have to constantly go to work. It's just over 400 pages, but I devoured this. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I really liked that the entire story was really focused on the adults with minimal flashbacks to what happened to them as children, because in the grand scheme of things, what happened to them as children is only like 2 weeks worth of time. So to make an entire book about that, I think would not have been as effective, but I really, really, really loved the adult perspective. I thought one of the weak points in It for me, and again, It is my favorite novel, is that a lot of the characters I feel like kind of lose themselves a little bit when they're adults. Like the things that you really loved about them as children aren't quite there with the adults. And I think you see this even more in the films. This book is great because you get who the person is fully as the adult, and then when you roll back to the flashbacks, you get to see how they fully emerged into that person from their childhood. And I think it was just really, really effective. And I bring this criticism up of King because I always think that Stanley in It, while I totally understand his narrative and it really builds up how he got from Stanley as a child to what he does as an adult, I just always felt like it needed maybe something more from his adult perspective to fully get the reader to understand why he does what he does. But in this, because we're really only focusing on 3 of the 4 children, and you'll see why when you read the book, why we only really focus on the like true adult lives and how their past affect their future of the 3 children. But because we took that direction, I think it's really, really, really palatable and it's really believable, and they're all really compelling characters. None of them are the best people in the world. They all have their flaws, but they're so believable, and it's so interesting to see 3 kids who pretty much had the same experience grow up to be so far removed from each other. I thought this was absolutely awesome. I thought it was scary. I thought it was chilling. I thought it was super unique and original. If you're into cosmic horror, I will say there is some cosmic horror in this, though I think it was done very, very tastefully. My number one thing with cosmic horror that I hate is when at the very end something huge and cosmic comes out of nowhere and it's just like, boom, that's the end, right? I think Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke does that and it drives me crazy. Revival by Stephen King does that and drives me crazy. This, in the same vein as like Malignant Summer by Tim Meyer, you get the hints at it rolling onwards, and then it doesn't just become this like climactic, like super fast thing and then it's over. Like, it really unravels before you to make sense, and that's the type of cosmic horror that I am okay with. So I did really, really enjoy this. Again, coming of age story, different perspective of the coming of age story, again, because it leans more on the adults rather than the children, but still felt so true to that coming of age, childhood, summer horror story that I love. This was a 5-star read for me. Right now, this might be the best book that I have read all year. And again, I will have a full in-depth video where I really break down all of the things that I loved and enjoyed about this book, but I highly recommend if you are into if you're into coming of age horror stories, pick this up, because this absolutely blew me away. Like, everything I read from Ronald Malfi, all of his new releases, they're just better and better and better than the ones before, and he is just such a fantastic writer, and I adore him. So yes, 5 stars. So happy to have that. So I had, I guess, like a 2-star read, a 3-star read, 3 4-star reads, and then the 1 5-star read. So pretty solid month. I'm hoping to get through another 6 books in August. I'm hoping to finally tackle Summer of Night. 1, because it is, I know, a book about summer, and 2, because it is a very famous, well-loved coming of age story. So hopefully I will tackle that very, very soon this month. If not this month, hopefully September. It is my goal to read that book. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.